When my son's wife told me that I should stay away for a while, I smiled instead of crying. I do not know why. Maybe I was already used to silence. Maybe I had been preparing myself for this moment without realizing. I walked out of their home that night with a small bag in my hand, clothes, a few medicines, and the shawl my son gifted me years ago. I held it close as if it still carried his warmth. The city roads were loud, but inside me there was only quiet heartbreak. I waited for him to call. I waited for his footsteps behind me. But the door did not open again. No one stopped me. The bus ride back to my village took 3 hours. 3 hours where I replayed every memory I had of my boy. His first steps, his first day of school, how he used to hold my hand like I was his whole world. I raised him alone after his father passed. There were nights we slept hungry, days I stitched clothes for others just to keep him studying, yet I never complained. He was my happiness, my reason to wake up each morning. I thought when he got married, our family would become bigger, our home warmer, our table full, but instead, I felt like a guest in the place I once believed would be mine too. When I reached my little house in the village, the silence welcomed me first. Dust on the furniture, cold stove, empty chair. I put my bag down and sat on the same chair where I once watched him study under the lamp. I whispered into the still night. Did I do something wrong, or did I simply stop being needed? There was no answer, just the soft creaking of old walls and the quiet ache inside my chest. That night I did not cry. Tears needed strength, and I was tired. I only closed my eyes and hoped that tomorrow, perhaps my son would remember me again. I grew up in this village all my life. The same narrow streets, the small market, the old banyan tree by the river. I never left because I loved it here and because I needed a home for my son. When he was born, I held him in my arms and promised I would always be there, no matter what, no matter how hard life got. He was everything to me, my only child, my joy, my responsibility. His father had died when he was very small. I remember the night clearly. The wind blew hard and I held my baby close, crying silently so he wouldn't hear me. From that day on, I became both mother and father. I worked in the fields. I sewed clothes for the neighbors. I cooked, cleaned, and studied with him in the evenings. Every penny, every sacrifice was for him. We were not rich, far from it, but our home was full of love. I watched him grow from a crawling baby to a laughing little boy who ran, barefoot on the village paths. I remember the first time he held my hand and said, "Mama, I want to learn everything from you." I had no education myself, but I taught him all I could. I wanted him to dream bigger than I ever did. School days were hard. The roads were long, the rains harsh. Sometimes he would come home muddy, crying from the cold or from bullies at school. I held him tight and whispered, "Don't worry, my son. One day, all this will feel like a story, not a burden." He grew into a young man with gentle eyes. The whole village loved him. People would say, "She raised him well. He is polite, kind, and hard-working." When he turned 20, he told me he was in love. I met his girlfriend once, a quiet girl from the city, polite, soft-spoken. She seemed nice. I smiled, careful not to show too much curiosity. I wanted my son to be happy. I did not mind stepping back if it meant he had a partner who cared for him. Their wedding was small but beautiful. I cried quietly as I watched him put a ring on her finger. The same hands I held as a baby now held someone else's hand. And yet, I smiled. I was proud. Proud that he had grown, proud that he was making his own family. The first few months after marriage were fine. He called me every evening. He came home on weekends. We laughed, we shared meals, we remembered old stories. I thought our bond would never break. But little by little, things began to shift. Calls became shorter. Visits became rare. The little jokes we shared faded. The warmth that had always been between us grew cooler. Like morning mist that disappears under the sun, I noticed it first in small ways. He would brush past me when I tried to hug him. He would avoid certain topics, especially about our old home, our memories, our struggles. His wife always seemed nearby, calm but firm. I understood she loved him, and I tried to respect that. But something in my heart tightened with each passing day. I remember one evening when I cooked his favorite meal and went to their home. He opened the door, smiling, but his eyes were distant. His wife spoke first, softly but clearly. "Mama, we need some space. Please don't interfere too much." I nodded, smiled, and stepped back. I did not argue. I did not cry. But that night, walking back to my small village house, I felt a quiet ache. A subtle, gnawing feeling that my place in his life was slowly slipping away. Still, I reminded myself, he is a good man. He loves his wife. He does not mean to hurt me. And so I waited for him to remember, waited for him to come back even in little ways, to the mother who had raised him alone. After the first months of marriage, the quiet distance began slowly, almost unnoticed at first. It was like water dripping on a stone, small drops, but persistent. He called less often. When he did, his voice was polite but distant. Sometimes I tried to ask about his days, his new home, or even little things we used to laugh about. He would smile softly, but the warmth was gone. "Mama, everything's fine here," he said once, brushing past the question like dust. I could feel it. Something had changed. And it was not him alone. It was the life he had stepped into, the wife who now shared every detail of his day. Their home was clean, modern, and different from our little village house. I had once dreamed he would build a warm space where we could all sit together, where our stories would mingle with laughter. But now it felt like I was an outsider. At first, I tried not to notice. I told myself, he is married. Let him find his life. I raised him well. My job is done. But small moments hurt more than the big ones. I remember the day I visited unexpectedly, carrying his favorite food, sweet rice with jaggery and cardamom, something he always loved as a child. The door opened and he smiled, but his eyes darted toward her. His wife's polite, calm expression carried an invisible wall. "Mama, you shouldn't have come," she said gently. I nodded, holding the plate tightly. I tried to smile, trying to make the moment light. "I thought you'd like this. Just like when you were little," I said softly. He glanced at me, then at her, then back at me, and the warmth I expected to see in his eyes wasn't there. He said nothing and took the plate. I felt a small stab in my chest, but I swallowed it. Weeks passed, and visits became planned events, not spontaneous meetings. I tried to adjust, not interfere, not ask too many questions. But deep inside, my heart ached at being slowly pushed aside. Sometimes I would wait for him on weekends, expecting a call, a short visit, a laugh over memories. And sometimes he would come, but he was quieter, hesitant, careful. I noticed how she managed the conversations, how she chose words, how she made small corrections to things we once shared freely. I did not blame her completely. She wanted her husband, her home, her life. But it hurt. It hurt to watch him step into her world and leave mine behind. I tried to keep myself busy. I worked in the small garden behind my house, mended old clothes, cooked for neighbors. I walked to the river where he had learned to fish, hoping to feel a connection again. The village had not changed much, but my heart felt distant, like the city was slowly taking him away. One afternoon I received a short message from him. "Mama, can't visit this weekend. We have guests." No explanation, no warmth, no question about my health, just the message. I read it several times sitting on my old wooden chair. My hands trembled slightly, but I did not cry. I whispered to myself, "He is busy. He is happy. Let him live." But the ache stayed. A small incident made it worse. I had called him early one morning just to hear his voice. "Mama, I'm at work," he said, rushing, clearly distracted. I felt invisible. It was as if the years of care, of sleepless nights, of all my love, had evaporated into the air. Still, I kept going. I reminded myself of the bond we shared, of the memories we made. Sometimes I would sit in front of his old room in our village house, touching the small wooden desk he had carved himself, remembering him as a little boy. Even in the quiet moments, I felt proud. Proud that he had grown into a man of kindness and discipline. Proud that he had a wife who loved him. Proud that he could live his life fully, even if it left me in the background. But there were days when I felt the sting deeply. The birthday I had once celebrated with him was now a small message on social media. The festivals we had cooked together were now videos he sent from a distant city. I remember one evening, I cooked a small meal for myself and sat under the banyan tree, looking at the stars. The wind whispered, carrying memories of his laughter, his first steps, his tiny hands in mine. I wished he could see that his mother still cared. I wished he could remember that all the love he felt growing up was still here, waiting, patient, and quiet. Yet the distance continued to grow. Then came the day when everything felt like it was slipping completely away. I had heard that he was unwell, just a minor cold, but when I called, his wife answered sharply, "Mama, he's fine. Don't worry so much." There was tension in her voice, something I had never heard before. I felt a pang of fear. Was he really fine? Did he need me? For the first time, I realized that not only had he grown distant, but someone else had now become his shield, his protector and his guide. Someone who decided what he would know and what he wouldn't. I walked to the river that evening, carrying the weight of years and memories. The gentle flow reminded me of time passing, of life moving forward. But inside me, there was a quiet storm of longing. I whispered into the wind, "Come back to me, my child. Remember who you are and who I am." Days passed. Calls were rare. Visits rarer. The ache inside me was constant, but I held it quietly, like a small ember that refused to die. Every night, I prayed for his safety, for his health, for his heart to remain kind. Even if mine was aching, I never blamed him. I only hoped he could see the love that had always been waiting for him. Patient, silent, unwavering. And then, one morning, the call came. Not from him, but from the hospital. The call from the hospital came early in the morning. "Is this Mrs. Sharma? Your son has been admitted. It's urgent." My heart stopped. Urgent? What happened? I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers ached. I asked for details. The voice on the other side was calm but firm. "He fainted at work. Blood pressure is very low. You should come immediately." The bus ride to the city was the longest journey of my life. I sat silently, clutching my bag, my heart beating faster with each passing minute. Memories of him as a child flooded my mind, his first steps, his first words, the nights I stayed awake waiting for him to come home safely. I reached the hospital, trembling. The receptionist guided me to his room. As I entered, I saw him lying on the bed, pale and weak. Machines beeped quietly, nurses moving in soft, practiced motions. He opened his eyes when he heard me, and for a moment he did not speak. Then he whispered, "Mama." That single word carried a weight I had not felt in months. All the distance, all the coldness, all the tension melted away in that moment. I sat by his side and took his hand. His fingers were cold. I held them in mine, as I used to when he was a child afraid of the dark. "I'm here, Beta. I'm right here," I said softly. Tears came unbidden, not loud, not sobbing, but small, warm, quiet tears that rolled down my cheeks. His wife entered then, and I could see the worry etched on her face. She looked at me, a mix of relief and something else, perhaps, recognition of the bond that had always existed. "Mama, I didn't call you earlier. I should have," he murmured, his voice weak. "It's all right, Beta. What matters is that you're safe now," I whispered, stroking his hair gently. The nurse adjusted his IV line, but I barely noticed. All I could do was sit beside him and remember every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every prayer I had whispered silently for him. As the hours passed, he began to regain strength. His eyes met mine with a clarity that spoke more than words. "Mama, I didn't realize. I forgot. I should have been there," he said. His voice was shaky, full of guilt. "Shh, it's okay. "You're here now," I said softly. He took my hand again, squeezing it weakly but firmly. For the first time in months, I felt our bond restored, not fully, but enough to breathe again. That night, I stayed with him in the hospital. I watched him sleep, listened to the slow rhythm of his breathing, felt the rise and fall of his chest. Every small sign of life felt miraculous. His wife brought him water, then sat quietly beside me. She did not speak, but her eyes softened. I realized she had not been his enemy, just a new presence in his life that he had to navigate. And perhaps she too had been protecting him in her way. By the next morning, he was sitting up, still pale but much stronger. He looked at me and said, "Mama, I'm sorry for being distant, for forgetting, for letting things slip." I shook my head gently, holding back tears. "I never expected anything from you, Beta. I only wanted you safe. That's all a mother wants." The guilt in his eyes was clear. He reached out, holding both my hands this time. "Mama, I will never take you for granted again." It felt like a weight lifted from my heart. All the months of loneliness, the quiet ache of being forgotten, seemed to fade in that moment. We spent the rest of the day quietly. I helped him eat, shared stories from the village, laughed softly at memories he had forgotten. Even his wife smiled, finally relaxed. There was no tension, only care. In the evening, he asked me to stay for dinner. Just the three of us. It was small, simple, but it meant the world. "Mama, you're part of this home. Always," he said, as he served me the food I had once made for him as a child. I felt tears again, but this time of joy. Quiet, deep, full of relief and gratitude. For the first time in months, I felt that the distance between us had begun to shrink. The bond that nothing, not time, not marriage, not misunderstandings, could break was coming back. Later, when he rested, I looked around the room, the machines, the hospital bed, the quiet hum of activity. It all seemed less frightening now. I realized life was fragile. Moments of love and connection were precious, and nothing could replace them. He slept peacefully that night, and I sat beside him, holding his hand. I whispered softly, "No matter where life takes you, I will always be here. Always." And I knew he finally understood. The days after his hospital stay were quiet, yet full of meaning. My son was recovering slowly, and I stayed by his side, helping him regain strength. The fear and worry that had haunted me for months began to dissolve, replaced by relief and gratitude. He looked at me differently now, not the distracted, distant man I had seen for so long, but someone who remembered the love and care that had shaped him. "Mama," he said one evening as I helped him sit up, "I never realized how much I depended on you. I was wrong to let distance grow between us." I smiled softly. "Beta, you are growing, learning. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is that we are here now." He took my hand, holding it as he did when he was a child. His grip was gentle but firm, filled with remorse and newfound appreciation. I could feel the warmth return, the connection that had never truly disappeared. Even his wife began to change. The calm wall she had built around him seemed to soften. She started to include me more in their conversations, asking for my advice, listening to my stories. She never tried to replace me or claim my place. Instead, she learned to respect the bond between a mother and her son, and in time we found a delicate harmony. One afternoon, he asked me to join them for a small meal at their home. I agreed, my heart beating with a mix of hope and nervousness. When I arrived, he greeted me with a warmth I had not seen for months. She smiled as well, quietly, respectfully. "Mama," he said, "this home is yours too. Please never feel like a guest." I felt tears prick my eyes. The words were simple, but they carried everything I had longed to hear. I nodded, unable to speak at first, overwhelmed by emotion. We sat together at the table, sharing food, laughter, and memories. He told me about his work, his struggles, and even his little regrets. I listened, offering quiet support, but more importantly, simply being present. The city lights outside the window could not compare to the warmth in that room. Days turned into weeks, and our relationship continued to heal. We spoke on the phone daily, shared meals whenever possible, and revisited memories from the village that once felt like a distant past. One evening, as we sat together in their small living room, my son looked at me with earnest eyes. "Mama, I never want to forget you again. You are my mother, my guide, my home. I promise to never let anything come between us." I reached out, taking his hands in mine. "Beta, all I ever wanted was your happiness and safety. Seeing you healthy and kind is enough for me." Even his wife joined us in the conversation, offering a gentle smile. "Mama, I understand now," she said softly. "I see the love you have given him. I respect it, and I will never come between you." That moment felt like a balm to my heart. The tension that had lingered for months, the small ache of being forgotten, the loneliness, I felt it all release. We were a family again, not perfect, but stronger for having faced the storm together. Over the next few weeks, I visited their home more frequently. I helped with small tasks, shared stories of the village, and even guided them in little household traditions that I had kept alive. My son listened attentively, learning to balance his own life with the respect and care for his mother. We laughed together, remembering his childhood antics, the times he had climbed trees too high, the evenings he had cried over small disappointments. Those memories, once distant, now felt alive again. I realized that the distance had taught us all a lesson. Love does not fade, but it must be nurtured. Care must be expressed, not assumed. Patience and understanding can heal what time has worn thin. One rainy afternoon, my son called me to their home. He had prepared a small corner of the house, just for me, with flowers, my favorite chair, and a small shelf for my books and keepsakes. "Mama, this is your space," he said softly. "A place where you are always welcome." My heart swelled with emotion. I embraced him, feeling the warmth of our bond. Tears fell freely, not from sorrow, but from the deep, quiet joy of being remembered and cherished. We sat together, listening to the rain patter on the windows, sharing stories, laughter, and gentle silences that spoke louder than words. In that space, I felt a sense of belonging I had longed for since the day I had been asked to step back. Even his wife joined us, pouring tea, sharing her thoughts, and offering her respect. The three of us sat together, a new family rhythm forming, built on understanding, care, and love. I realized then that reconciliation was not just about being present. It was about being seen, understood, and valued. My son had learned, and I had waited patiently, but together we had found our way back to each other. From that day on, our relationship grew steadily. We shared small routines, meals, laughter, and even disagreements. But now they were filled with respect and understanding, not tension. The ache of distance had transformed into a bond stronger than ever before. I often think back to those months of quiet loneliness. The ache was real, but it was temporary. What mattered was the love that endured, the patience that held steady, and the courage to step forward when it mattered most. Through this, I learned that family is not just about proximity. It is about presence, care, and the willingness to understand one another, even when life pulls us apart. And in our home, whether in the village or the city, I knew that my son, his wife, and I had built something lasting, a connection rooted in love, respect, and shared memories that would never fade. The months after his recovery passed quietly, but the quiet was no longer empty. It was full of understanding, love, and presence. My son's voice on the phone was warm again, full of laughter, concern, and affection. Visits were frequent, and I felt a peace that had been missing for too long. I often sit in my small village home, looking at the garden I have tended for years, and smile. Life has a way of teaching us patience. Sometimes love is tested in silence, in distance, in moments when we feel forgotten, but it endures if we hold it carefully and never let go. I learned that forgiveness is not about forgetting the hurt, but about choosing to see the other person's heart. My son did not mean to hurt me. He simply became caught in the life he was building for himself. And I chose to wait, to be patient, and to continue loving him quietly. Even his wife and I found our own rhythm. We are not just mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. We are two women who care deeply for the same man. She has her place, I have mine, and together we support him and our family. There is respect now, and even quiet affection has grown. I sometimes think back to the months when I felt forgotten. The loneliness, the small pangs of rejection, the quiet ache in my heart, they all taught me something. They taught me that love does not need constant recognition to exist. They taught me patience, resilience, and the quiet power of presence. I also realized that children, no matter how old, need guidance, patience, and gentle reminders of where their roots lie. And parents, no matter their age, need to trust that the bonds they built cannot simply disappear. Time, distance, and life's challenges may strain those bonds, but they do not break them. The day I returned to their home for a small family dinner, I felt the warmth of belonging again. The table was modest but full of laughter and conversation. We shared old stories, new experiences, and even moments of quiet reflection. I felt the love in their eyes, not just for me but for each other, and for the family we are building together. I whispered a small prayer in my heart, thanking life for this second chance, thanking my son for remembering, thanking him for letting me back into his life. And silently I forgave myself for the months of worry, for the fear I had carried, and for doubting the strength of our bond. Family is not only about living together or sharing meals. It is about presence, love, understanding, and the willingness to return to one another, even after distance and misunderstanding. The heart remembers, even if the mind forgets. And when hearts remember, reconciliation is possible, soft and lasting. I know now that love has many forms, some loud, some quiet, some tested by time, challenged by circumstance. But love that is true will find its way back. It does not demand perfection. It only asks for patience, empathy, and care. As I sit under the banyan tree near my village home, feeling the wind on my face and the gentle rhythm of life around me, I feel complete. My son, his wife, and I have found our place again, not just as family, but as a unit bound by love, patience, and understanding. And I smile softly, whispering to the memories, the challenges, and the lessons. No matter where life takes us, love endures. And home is always where the heart remembers to be.